Hey guys, Ibra here with Hardware Canucks, and it's that time of the year again, another big processor launch from AMD. Now, if you recall, the last processor focus video that we did on the channel was around the second generation Ryzen 2 CPUs, which are quite fascinating, by the way, because they use an enhanced Zen Plus architecture. And if you're interested in learning more about those CPUs, you can check it out right over here. But now it's time for the Zen Plus architecture to make its way into the high-end desktop platform, meaning we're talking about the launch of Threadripper 2. Now, just to clear this out, you could refer this as second generation Threadripper or Threadripper 2. It doesn't really matter because the nomenclature does feature the second generation branding, so you could refer to this the way you want. It doesn't really matter at this point. But what does this really mean for Skylake X, or what kind of competition can we expect for Team Blue? In fact, what kind of performance benefits or differences are we going to see with this new processor launch from AMD? We'll find that out, but I also wanted to talk about a very special processor that AMD is launching that has the highest number of cores that can be available for the desktop platform ever yet, because it is really, it's just amazing at how far we've come in terms of technology and what it's offering for its value. So let's get into the juicy details, but first, a quick message from our sponsor.
The new T-Force Excalibur DDR4 memory is one unique RGB kit with awesome light spill from each module, and the special edition has a cool totem design on the light bar. You get lifetime warranty, up to 4000 MHz speeds, and full lighting control through the software. Check out the T-Force Excalibur RAM down below.
Alright, so before I get too far into this video, I just want to quickly clear up a few things around these new processor launch. So first and foremost, it is quite interesting because today is the unboxing embargo day, which means that we are only allowed to share a few details regarding these processors, but I'll try my best to not make this just an unboxing video, but rather share as much information as I can regarding, the specs on these new processors, along with the pricing and availability as well. Now, you could pre-order some of these CPUs today, but I would highly recommend you wait for the performance analysis of these new processors and then take the plunge, because they're not cheap. So let's start off with a little bit of a history lesson. If you remember, the original Zen architecture launch brought us Ryzen processors, and those were followed up by Threadripper for the high-end desktop market. Now we're seeing pretty much the same thing all over again. Ryzen 2 and the 12nm Zen Plus architecture got into our hands in April, and Threadripper 2 will be available starting this month. While the second generation Threadripper lineup will consist of 4 new processors, the big boy this time around is the amazing 2990WX, and with it, AMD is throwing a massive, and I mean a massive rock at Intel's glass house. This thing has 32 physical cores and 64 threads, which happens to destroy what Intel offers with the 18-core 36-threaded i9-7980XE. Not only that, but this CPU costs about $200 less and also operates at higher base clock speeds. So yeah, that's a direct slap in the face for Intel. Obviously, the 2990WX is aiming for a market that Intel can't match, but the 24-core, 48-threaded 2970WX may be the final nail in the 7980XE's coffin. It potentially offers more overall multi-threaded performance, but costs $1,300 US. While that certainly isn't cheap, it's a great value for an ultra high-end performance part. AMD did provide a number of internal benchmarks, and they certainly show promise for the 2990WX. It absolutely destroys Intel's leading HEDT offering in multi-threaded workloads, but this chart also highlights something that AMD wants us to make very clear to you guys. The WX series chips is genuinely a poor value for gamers. If that's something that you're looking into, you should be maximizing your GPU investment while buying a Ryzen or Coffee Lake CPU. Even if you're someone who does video or photo editing while streaming a game, the lower priced Threadripper processors I'll go over in a few seconds will be a much better fit. The 2990WX and the 2970WX are tailor-made for high-level virtualization, pure content creation, production studio levels of video processing, or other areas where such a huge number of cores can be put to good use. I think core affinity would be a great option here, and just take that very honest advice from AMD into account before you put down a ton of money. One thing that you will want to take into account is that these WX series CPUs have a huge TDP of 250 watts, but they should still be able to overclock by a small amount. Speaking of those more affordable processors, let me introduce you to the Threadripper 2950X and the 2920X. Basically, these will be replacing the 1950X and the 1920X with CPUs that deliver higher clock speeds and the enhanced features we saw on Ryzen 2 processors like Precision Boost 2, higher memory speeds, and XFR2. Basically, the 2950X's boost clock is 400 MHz higher, and the 2920X's is 300 MHz higher than their predecessors, which could make a pretty big difference in games and other lightly threaded applications. That's great news, since AMD expects these to appeal to enthusiasts and gamers who need the ability to run parallel workloads. What hasn't changed is the core counts from last generation, since these parts have 16 and 12 cores along with identical caching structures. AMD is also being very aggressive on pricing as well. While the 1950X and the 1920X were launched at $999 and $799 respectively, these new CPUs shave off between $100 and $150 from that. I'm hoping this will force Intel to lower their Skylake X prices by a bit, but somehow I don't think that's going to happen, since that could make it look like they're giving in to AMD's pressure. What you won't see here is a replacement for the 1900X, and that won't likely happen according to AMD. I suppose it makes sense, since the 2700X already performs really well with its 8 cores and 16 threads, while the X470 platform has plenty of features. Don't forget that the 2800X may still be waiting in the wings too. AMD simply didn't want to put too much of an overlap between their different lineups, and the 2920X's $150 price will really help bridge the gap between Threadripper and the higher-end Ryzen CPUs. So overall, AMD expects we'll see a 4 to 8% improvement over the original Threadripper results, which is good for multi-thread workloads, but these CPUs will still trail a bit behind Skylake X in gaming performance. However, that 6% shortfall is at 1080p, and once a higher resolution is used, we've seen the playing field become pretty level. Click the link above to check out a video that we did with an older Sandy Bridge system using newer games. It actually ended up giving almost the same gaming results as an 8700K with the GTX 1080 Ti. So trust me, if you game at high resolutions, a Threadripper system will likely align perfectly with Skylake X. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's unbox this new processor. So it's great to see that AMD upgraded their packaging along with their architecture, but something you may have noticed was the form factor of the 2950X. It still uses the same TR4 socket found on today's first generation Threadrippers, and guess what that means? Yep, that's right, AMD won't be updating their X399 platform, and even the 2990WX and the 2970WX will be fully compatible with existing motherboards. There won't be any new features added, since AMD believes their current HDT motherboards have more than enough features for enthusiasts, and I completely agree with that. If you do have an existing X399 motherboard, the upgrade process is actually pretty simple. All you have to do is download and install the latest BIOS that supports these new Threadripper processors, and you can just simply swap out the CPU with the new one and enjoy. But what if you order a motherboard that's running an older BIOS? The process is actually fairly straightforward, because every X399 motherboard that's available on the market right now supports USB BIOS flashback feature. So this essentially means that you wouldn't necessarily need a CPU in order for this thing to function. So all you have to do is just download that BIOS to the USB, plug it into the motherboard, and you can start the flashback or the BIOS update process right away. The last thing that I wanted to mention is how AMD will be staggering this launch, because Threadripper 2 products will be trickling out rather than being available all at the same time. The first one out of the gate will be the Threadripper 2990WX, which starts shipping on August the 13th, and that's followed by the 2950X on August the 30th. Then we'll have to wait all the way until October for the 2970WX and the 2920X. I have to wonder if these dates are being planned around Intel's rumored launch schedule, or if it's just a matter of ensuring availability. So that pretty much wraps up our introduction to Threadripper 2. There's obviously a lot more content coming around in the next few days and weeks with these new processors. Personally, I'm really excited with what AMD is doing lately. Not only have they successfully introduced an evolved version of Threadripper in less than a year since their original launch, but they're obviously winning the core count against Intel. Now, one of the biggest benefits I see is their commitment towards the X399 platform, because it still offers way more connectivity features compared to X299, and these processors are simply a drop-in upgrade, and that's pretty awesome. I guess the real question here is whether or not if Intel would respond, and if they do, what would their response be like? Let me tell you this, the end of 2018 is certainly going to look promising or interesting for content creators and enthusiasts. But what do you guys think? Do you have plans to purchase Threadripper 2, or does Ryzen 2 or Coffee Lake still hold more value to you? Let us know in the comments down below. Obviously, stay tuned for more coverage around these new Threadripper processors. But until then, you can check out some relevant content over here, or you can subscribe to our new Boot Sequence channel for the latest tech news and rumors. I'm Embargo with HardwareCanucks. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.